After a few days off the campaign trail, the Republican nominee, Governor Mitt Romney, talked exclusively today with chief political correspondent Carl Cameron, a few hours before the Democrats made their platform change.
Day two of the Democratic National Convention, and hours before the president's party reversed itself, Mitt Romney blasted Democrats for having removed any reference to God from its official platform.
You know, our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, references God. Our national motto, "In God we trust." I mean, this is part of our heritage, and I think they're having removed purposefully God from their platform suggests a party which is increasingly out of touch with the mainstream of American people. I think this party is veering further and further away into an extreme wing that Americans don't recognize.
Do you see it as part of the so-called war on religion?
I see it as being out of touch and detached and simply so far removed from the interests and concerns of the American people that people look at this party and look at President Obama and his leadership and see someone who's taking us in a direction which they don't recognize.
Romney interrupted preparations for his debates with the president next month. Before Democrats restored the language, he hammered them for deleting a passage about Jerusalem being Israel's capital.
Well, when the president ran in 2008, he said that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel. That was his posture at that point. That's also been the posture in the Democratic platform. The president and his party have now changed their position. They now say that they're not certain what the capital of Israel might be. I find that one more example of Israel being thrown into the bus by the president. I think it's a very sad day when we have our best friend in the Middle East, a nation which shares our values, a nation now under extraordinary threat and distress when nations around it like Syria and Egypt are going through tumult of their own. For us at a stage like this to take an action of that nature, to cease calling Jerusalem the capital of Israel. This is a very troubling development, and I think one which will be recognized for what it is by people across America and across the world.
During your convention, Republicans ran a debt clock. During the Democrats' convention, or actually just an hour or so before it started, that debt clock ran to $16 trillion. What does that say about the current state of affairs for this country?
Well, there are two numbers you're not going to hear in the Democrat convention. You certainly haven't heard them yet. One is 16 for the $16 trillion of debt which we've now amassed, and the president came in, there was 10 trillion. All the prior presidents combined had amassed 10 trillion. He's now added 6 to that, 16 trillion, an unthinkable number. The other number you won't hear is the number of 47. 47 million people have now been reported to be on food stamps. When the president came in, there were 33 million. It's a 32 actually. That's a $15 million person increase. That's more than the population of Ohio have been added to the rolls of food stamps. This president's policies have simply not worked, either from a debt standpoint or from the standpoint of helping those that are falling from the middle class into poverty.
And yet, the Obama for America senior staff is arguing that people are absolutely better off than they were 4 years ago.
You know, no one in the convention so far has had the temerity to say that people are better off in America because they realize it's not the case. This has been a very difficult 4 years, and they're doing their best to celebrate something, but it's a celebration of failure.
So if he doesn't get an I for incomplete, what grade do you give him?
Well, you know, incomplete usually means that you got to go back and take the course again. I don't think the American people want to see this president get another 4 years. The last 4 years have not been good for the middle class in America. There's no question but that his policies have led to more people falling out of the middle class into poverty, more people in poverty, 1 out of 6, a record number of people on food stamps, 47 million. This has not been a good time for the American people. Anyone that wants to let him try it again, I think, would be making a big mistake.
They certainly didn't mention things being better off, at least last night, than 4 years ago. But Democrats say that, well, you didn't mention the troops and didn't mention things overseas related to U.S. military efforts. First time in 52 years they say that that's happened. How come that happened?
I actually went to the American Legion the day before my speech. Both the president and I were invited. I actually left the convention, went to the American Legion, and there talked about our troops, talked about our commitment to the military, and talked about our commitment to our veterans. So I had an opportunity to speak at great length about the sacrifice of our troops. And by the way, in my speech, I also spoke about our military and my commitment not to shrink our military, and how different that is from the decision of the president to slash our military by $1 trillion over this decade.
This president's predecessor Democratic predecessor, Bill Clinton, speaks tonight. He has on occasion said some kind things about you. Tonight, it's expected that he'll be a little bit less kind and probably take you to task on the assertion that President Obama has gutted welfare by his Health and Human Services Directive memorandum to make available waivers. You want to pre-act to that?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what President Clinton will say, but there's no question but that President Obama's decision to say that we're going to allow waivers or excuses from work requirements in welfare was designed to shore up part of his base that may not be inclined to go out and vote in the same kind of energy and passion as they did 4 years ago. And I think putting in a measure that would take work out of welfare and waiving the work requirement in welfare is an extraordinary political move on his part, and one which I disagree with. My own view is that we should have greater work requirements with welfare, not less. When I was governor of my state, I moved more than once to increase our work requirements because I happen to believe that work is dignified, that it's uplifting, and that we should not encourage a permanent lifestyle of living on welfare.
He said much the same on the president's flip-flop earlier this year to support gay marriage and the decision to no longer enforce deportation orders on the children of illegal immigrants who were brought here by their parents.
I think there's no question but that a great deal of what the president has done in the last several months has been designed to shore up his base. It's political in nature as opposed to policy. Look, when he ran for office, he said in his first year, his highest priority would be immigration reform. And yet in his first year and second year, with a Democrat House and Democrat Senate, he did nothing. No, he waited until a few months before the election and then took a move which, of course, is temporary in nature. It's not law.
Romney's been under fire for opposing the auto industry bailout, which it turns out cost $21 billion tax dollars more than originally expected.
Well, my view from the very beginning was that the auto companies needed to go through a managed bankruptcy. And ultimately, that's what the president did. He finally took them through a managed bankruptcy. But it took him 6 months to get there. And during that 6 months, they spent, well, about $20 billion that didn't need to be spent. I think they should have moved more quickly to a managed bankruptcy. I'm glad they went through that process and they've come out. And the support they got after bankruptcy, I think, was appropriate to give them the ability to get back on their feet. But the extra $20 billion they lost, that was a mistake.
I assume you thought Ann's speech was a little bit better than Michelle Obama's speech.
I didn't hear Michelle Obama's speech, but I sure heard Ann's.
So you didn't watch?
No, I was.
Aren't you curious about the opposition or the opposition's spouse?
You know, I'm focused on taking my message to the American people. And the words that will come from the Obama campaign may be delightful and delicious and diversionary, but they cannot paper over the record of the last 4 years. The American people know that things are tougher for them.
And regarding the DNC's late decision to reverse itself and include language about Jerusalem as Israel's capital in the platform, the Romney campaign is continuing to put pressure on the president himself, saying, quote, "Now's the time for President Obama to state in unequivocal terms whether or not he believes Jerusalem is Israel's capital." Mitt Romney today and still